A man may be a pessimistic determinist before lunch and an optimistic believer in the will's freedom after it. Feasts must be solemn and rare, or else they cease to be feasts. God isn't compatible with machinery and scientific medicine and universal happiness. You must make your choice. Our civilization has chosen machinery and medicine and happiness. Happiness is a hard master, particularly other people's happiness. There's only one effectively redemptive sacrifice, the sacrifice of self-will to make room for the knowledge of God. Habit converts luxurious enjoyments into dull and daily necessities. Man is an intelligence in servitude to his organs. The charm of history and its enigmatic lesson consist in the fact that, from age to age, nothing changes and yet everything is completely different. Several excuses are always less convincing than one. So long as men worship the Caesars and Napoleons will duly arise and make them miserable. Children are remarkable for their intelligence and ardor, for their curiosity, their intolerance of shams, the clarity and ruthlessness of their vision. The quality of moral behavior varies in inverse ratio to the number of human beings involved. Men do not learn much from the lessons of history, and that is the most important of all the lessons of history. The vast majority of human beings dislike and even actually dread all notions with which they are not familiar. Hence it comes about that at their first appearance innovators have generally been persecuted, and always derided as fools and madmen. Proverbs are always platitudes until you have personally experienced the truth of them. Bondage is the life of personality, and for bondage the personal self will fight with tireless resourcefulness and the most stubborn cunning. Most of one's life is one prolonged effort to prevent oneself thinking. Words, words, words. They shut one off from the universe. 3/4 of the time one's never in contact with things, only with the beastly words that stand for them. The impulse to cruelty is, in many people, almost as violent as the impulse to sexual love, almost as violent and much more mischievous. It takes two to make a murder. There are born victims, born to have their throats cut, as the cutthroats are born to be hanged. The most valuable of all education is the ability to make yourself do the thing you have to do, when it has to be done, whether you like it or not. Most human beings have an almost infinite capacity for taking things for granted. One of the great attractions of patriotism, it fulfills our worst wishes. In the person of our nation we are able, vicariously, to bully and cheat. Bully and cheat, what's more, with a feeling that we are profoundly virtuous. Sons have always a rebellious wish to be disillusioned by that which charmed their fathers. What is absurd and monstrous about war is that men who have no personal quarrel should be trained to murder one another in cold blood. The propagandist's purpose is to make one set of people forget that certain other sets of people are human. Cynical realism is the intelligent man's best excuse for doing nothing in an intolerable situation. Most ignorance is vincible ignorance. We don't know because we don't want to know. There isn't any formula or method. You learn to love by loving, by paying attention and doing what one thereby discovers has to be done. A belief in hell and the knowledge that every ambition is doomed to frustration at the hands of a skeleton have never prevented the majority of human beings from behaving as though death were no more than an unfounded rumor. All gods are homemade, and it is we who pull their strings, and so, give them the power to pull ours. Consistency is contrary to nature, contrary to life. The only completely consistent people are dead. A fanatic is a man who consciously overcompensates a secret doubt. We participate in a tragedy, at a comedy we only look. Hell isn't merely paved with good intentions, it's walled and roofed with them. Yes, and furnished too. Every man's memory is his private literature. Every man who knows how to read has it in his power to magnify himself, to multiply the ways in which he exists, to make his life full, significant and interesting. Perhaps it's good for one to suffer. Can an artist do anything if he's happy? Would he ever want to do anything? What is art, after all, but a protest against the horrible inclemency of life? Science has explained nothing. The more we know, the more fantastic the world becomes and the profounder the surrounding darkness. Everyone who wants to do good to the human race always ends in universal bullying. The secret of genius is to carry the spirit of the child into old age, which means never losing your enthusiasm. There is only one corner of the universe you can be certain of improving, and that's your own self. Maybe this world is another planet's hell. After silence, that which comes nearest to expressing the inexpressible is music. Experience is not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you. There are things known and there are things unknown, and in between are the doors of perception. Beauty is worse than wine, it intoxicates both the holder and beholder. Technological progress has merely provided us with more efficient means for going backwards. That men do not learn very much from the lessons of history is the most important of all the lessons of history. The most shocking fact about war is that its victims and its instruments are individual human beings, and that these individual beings are condemned by the monstrous conventions of politics to murder or be murdered in quarrels not their own. It is a bit embarrassing to have been concerned with the human problem all one's life and find at the end that one has no more to offer by way of advice than try to be a little kinder. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you mad. An intellectual is a person who's found one thing that's more interesting than sex. The more powerful and original a mind, the more it will incline towards the religion of solitude. Great is truth, but still greater, from a practical point of view, is silence about truth. By simply not mentioning certain subjects, totalitarian propagandists have influenced opinion much more effectively than they could have by the most eloquent denunciations. I'm afraid of losing my obscurity. Genuineness only thrives in the dark, like celery. A childlike man is not a man whose development has been arrested, on the contrary, he is a man who has given himself a chance of continuing to develop long after most adults have muffled themselves in the cocoon of middle-aged habit and convention. A worst enemy of life, freedom and the common decencies is total anarchy, their second worst enemy is total efficiency. People intoxicate themselves with work so they won't see how they really are. To his dog, every man is Napoleon, hence the constant popularity of dogs.